Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and begin. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you to everyone who is joining us today for this annual meeting. For everyone that has joined us online, welcome. And for everyone in the sanctuary, welcome to you as well. We're going to begin with an opening prayer. Let us pray. Almighty and ever-living God, source of all wisdom and understanding, be present with those who take counsel in this annual meeting for the renewal and mission of your church. Teach us in all things to seek first your honor and glory. Guide us to perceive what is right, and grant us both the courage to pursue it and the grace to accomplish it. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. This annual meeting is now called to order. Our first order of business. My first order of business is to get this mask off so I can speak clearly. Our first order of business is the acceptance of the 2021 annual meeting minutes, which are in our packet or available to you that are online as well. And we will need a motion and a second. Thank you, Kim Bird and BJ Hardison. Thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. The annual meeting minutes are accepted. And now we move to our second order of business, which is our vestry elections. And we can see the individuals listed here on the agenda. For warden, for a one-year term, Cara Hart and Jeff Emmerich. Co-treasurers, one-year term, Ann Harney and John Roche. Vestry members for a three-year term, Lissy Brooks, Marcos Donnelly, Rosa Guzzo, and Dave McCary. Vestry member one-year term to complete Ann Harney's term is Annabelle Clapp. And delegates to convention, Cara Hart, Jeff Emmerich, alternate John Roche. Can I have a motion to elect these individuals to these positions? Thank you. And a second? Thank you. All in favor? Any opposed or any comments or questions? Scott Lamline is ready with a microphone as we go through the meeting today. If anyone does have comments or questions, Scott can swoop in with the microphone to allow you to speak up. Okay, thank you to all of these good and faithful people that have stepped up in these leadership positions. We give thanks to God for you. We're in good hands. And now, let us recognize those who are outgoing vestry members. Jeff.
Good morning. So I know that due to the weather that's affected people's ability to come in person, and welcome to folks who are joining us online. So we'd like to recognize Ellen Flynn, David Grimaldi, and Teresa Lohr for their, on behalf of the parish, we've got a couple of expressions of our gratitude here, which we'll get to them later. I want to recognize them for their 3 years of service on the vestry. Their faith and commitment to St. John's has really been crucial and helped us forge ahead in these tumultuous times. So it was Ellen's second term on the vestry after having served many years ago, leading an usher team for many years, which she continues to usher faithfully, and she's contributed in so many other ways to the life of the parish. So thanks to Ellen. David was serving his first term on the vestry, having chaired the planned giving and Christmas festival committees, and he continues to serve as an usher, a healing prayer minister, and now as the very highly qualified chair of the investment committee. Teresa accepted the call to join the vestry without hesitation, having really just moved to Connecticut with her family the previous summer. She jumped right into the work of the vestry, and with her unique background provided an invaluable perspective on our mission as an Episcopal church here in Hartford. So those three folks, they had one peaceful year on the vestry, and then COVID hit. So before long, they were making phone calls to parishioners to check in on them, adapting to multiple Zoom meetings, and then deep into a transition and priest-in-charge search committee. So none of that was part of the job description, and we'd really like to thank all of them for their dedication and wise counsel. So next, if Tim Getz is here, we would like to ask him to come forward, if you would. Put you on the spot. So we'd really like to thank Tim for his service as co-treasurer. He had already been on the vestry for 2 years when he volunteered for what he thought was 2 years as co-treasurer. Well, extenuating circumstances extended that term for another 2 years, which may have felt like 10, given all we asked of him. But despite that, he's worked really tirelessly to maintain a balanced and sustainable budget while keeping focus on the true mission of St. John's, what we're all about. And with his guidance, we've maintained an endowment draw of 5% or lower, while continuing to invest in worship, music, outreach, and everything else that we do. On a personal note, Tim has been a really true partner and trusted advisor to Virginia and me as we encountered one unprecedented situation after another. So thank you, Tim, for your dedication and sacrifice. So finally, we all owe a huge debt of gratitude to Virginia Van Dyke for her service as warden, just the latest in a long list of nonstop service over the past 12 years, including a term on the vestry, search committee for Susan, Sunday school teacher, co-chair of the newcomers committee, the food auction committee, and the list goes on and on. There is no single analogy for all she has done and meant to us in these past 3 years, and we could each easily come up with our own. For me, she's been a little bit like the pole in the center of a big tent, kind of protecting and supporting all the work going on below and keeping everything from collapsing in a big heap around us. Through Margie's arrival, Susan's departure, COVID, the search for a priest in charge, and the myriad issues in between, she has been the support, guide, mediator, and friend we all needed. When challenges have come up for me, my wife Karen would say, "Well, thank God you have Virginia." Well, I did then and continue to thank God for Virginia. Her warmth, wisdom, enthusiasm, leadership, organization, thoughtfulness, commitment, intentionality, and above all, her deep faith has been inspirational to me and to all of us. So.
Thank you for all of these wonderful, faithful people and all that you've given in this community. We are very grateful. Our next order of business is the resolutions that need to be that we need to recall and vote upon each year. I'm just going to read over them, all of them together, and then we'll vote on them and open it up for discussion about any of them as we go. First is a motion to authorize the treasurers or either warden to borrow up to $10,000 annually without calling a parish meeting. Second, a motion to authorize the vestry to fill a vacancy to serve until the next parish meeting, which always happen in January. And the motion to allow the co-treasurers or either warden to sell securities received in payment of pledges or other donations. May I have a motion for accepting these resolutions? And a second. Any discussion? Harriet.
I second. May I ask a question? Do we have a quorum here today, counting people in space?
That's a good question. How do we define quorum? That's a good question. Harriet's question was, do we have a quorum here in this meeting? And I think I need to look at the bylaws and make sure I know what a quorum is exactly.
We'll check on that as we go along and get back to you.
I believe it's something like 10% of our membership, and there are all sorts of different ways to count membership, but about 35 people would be a quorum. So I think we definitely have that. I believe we should double check, but I believe it's.
So it looks like we have that.
Thank you.
And if you have the folks watching online,
Right, but we will for sure confirm that.
Any other questions or comments about the three resolutions? Yes.
Sorry, just a quick query about motion number 3 or resolution number 3. Is there a maximum or a minimum value to which the wardens or co-treasurers would have to consult the parish? Like if they got a sizable donation of securities, would that require a parish discussion?
Just have to push it.
Hey Todd, as a former treasurer, can I offer a perspective? This may help. Basically,
Chris, will you just repeat the question first?
the question was, is there a threshold above which I believe the parish would need to be, or the vestry would need to be consulted before the securities were sold? Normally, well, in any case, what this allows the treasurers to do is when somebody makes a gift of stock, as opposed to paying their pledge in cash, the practice is to immediately sell the stock, right? And not to try to play an investment game, because it's not a donation to the endowment. It is literally pledge income, and so we treat it like cash. So the answer is there isn't one, because that's not the intention.
Thank you, Chris. Kate, Eichel?
For number 1, is the vestry notified on the borrowing, or is that noted? Okay.
for the first resolution. So yes, in a situation like this, that would be done in consultation with the vestry. It just, avoids having to call a full parish meeting like this. Does that answer your question?
Okay. Seeing no other hands up for more discussion, we've had a motion and a second. All in favor of accepting these 3 resolutions, say aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you. One year ago, leaders of this congregation put together a profile, a parish profile or a self-profile, in order to present to potential candidates. In that profile, there were strengths and challenges that were listed. And in preparation for this morning, I pulled out that profile. In particular, I wanted to examine or be reminded of those strengths and challenges as we think about where we are and where God is calling us to go in the foreseeable future. Those strengths and challenges, as written in January of 2021, are as follows. Number 1, the people. The greatest strength at St. John's is the people, including the staff, the vestry and the wardens, longtime members and new members of different ages. The greatest strength of St. John's, as explained in that document, is the people. Second, strength is reverent worship with excellent music in a beautiful sanctuary. That's exactly how it was expressed. Reverent worship with excellent music in a beautiful sanctuary. And the third strength that was explained in the document was location. The location of St. John's Church on the Hartford line. And it was explained in this way. The location means that St. John's straddles relative wealth in a community and great need in a neighboring community. And that this keeps us as a church focused on community partnerships and outreach. It was fascinating to me then, and it's still fascinating to me now, that this is one of the strengths that the leaders of St. John's listed. The challenges were as follows. Number 1, too much of a reliance on the endowment. A slight reduction in the draw is needed back in January of 2021. And the second challenge was the reality of the challenges of facing the twin pandemics. The pandemic of COVID-19. Remember, this was written in November, December of 2020 and January of 21. The twin pandemics of COVID-19 and racism. Those two were identified as ongoing challenges. I believe now that I'm settling in of sorts, 5 months in, that these strengths and challenges are still very much our reality. These continue to be, in my humble opinion, as still a newbie, a description of what I've seen and observed and heard at St. John's Church. I have seen concrete signs of how we are living into these strengths and into these challenges. For example, I have seen living into these strengths and into these challenges with a real sense of renewal in the very, very positive stewardship campaign, so faithfully led by Kim Bird and Matt Sissel and their committee. Over 20 new pledges, taking the total number of pledges over 150. and a total amount pledged, for the first time in many years, over $500,000. A real sign, a concrete sign of renewal and hope. I've also seen renewal and hope in these strengths and moving towards these new challenges, or these continued challenges, in the ways that we have a wonderful group of new disciples who are nominated to serve on the vestry and have stepped forward faithfully. In the generous donor who has joined others in the 1841 Legacy Society, remembering St. John's in their estate planning. I'm seeing renewal in the way that people are continuing to sign up. In the last 5 months, we've continued to have people sign up. Altar Guild, sign up as teachers and acolyte and live stream team. Sign up as nursery workers, readers, prayer leaders, healing prayers, and participants in Bible study. And in the dedicated group of parishioners that are committed to continuing to work for racial healing, justice, and reconciliation in and through St. John's as an expression of our baptismal covenant. And probably most importantly, I continue to see us work toward these strengths and challenges because we show up. In particular, we show up for worship. Showing up online, showing up in person to worship God, to find hope, and to share the love of God with others. At the end of that January 2021 document, there was an honest question. It was this question: are we open and flexible enough to what God is calling us to do and be? This question, I think, is still our question. Are we discerning how God is calling us as a community of disciples to grow in faith, to care for each other, and to love our neighbors? In March of 1841, God called 37 members of Christ Church, Hartford, 36 men and a woman named Sally J. Bartholomew. Who is Sally J. Bartholomew? I really want to know. God called 37 members of Christ Church in Hartford to step out in faith and to start St. John's Church. God is still calling. God is calling us to be good stewards of our endowment. And God is calling us to take prudent but faithful risks. God is still calling us to celebrate our people and to open our doors and our hearts to new people. God is still calling us to navigate the pandemic with hope and perseverance. And God is still calling us to confront the injustices of systemic racism with humility and courage. God is still calling. God is still calling us together in this beautiful sanctuary for reverent worship with excellent music, and to exit those red doors in all 4 directions, to go out and to do justice, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly together with God. May God help us and continue to inspire us in this endeavor.
I am not a warden, but I am going next. And I have my computer here because I'm also monitoring the chat on the live stream. Hello. I just want to take a moment to highlight a couple things in my report because, as usual, I put too many things in there. But the thing that I'm so grateful for and that I want to name is connection.
and these circles of connection that St. John's has been building and continues to build. Connection with God, connection with one another, the folks who call St. John's home, and connection with the wider community. When I think about connection with God, I think about the way of love that we're walking on this year in our Sunday school. All through the year, we've been working on what it means to learn about God, to bless, to pray, to rest, to turn, to worship, and go. We, in our worship, in our music program, in our Christian formation, in our Bible study, we continue to seek connection with God and a deeper connection with our prayer life and what it means to be faithful disciples and apostles. In terms of our connection with one another, it has been amazing and discombobulating to go through a pandemic with the wonderful people of St. John's because we continued to seek out connections. I know individuals who again and again wrote notes to people in the parish when we were all locked in because that was the way they made connection, and it was beautiful. The caring callers who said, you know what, we're going to call people and we're going to make those connections. The note writing campaign that the Sunday school kids did, it was great. They wrote Thanksgiving and Christmas cards just to people in the parish. Other ways of connection, the thing that made my heart the fullest was probably the Christmas pageant. Not because we had 40 kids back in here with their masks and everything else, that was great. Not because we had the camels, even though that was great. It was because we had more than a dozen adults who said, can I help? How can I help? Let me help. And I mean, that did me in, because the story of the post-pandemic church world is that we can't get enough people to help and that there's so much burnout. And what I see here is that we are fed by connection and we are fed by worshiping and working together rather than feeling frazzled, or maybe along with feeling frazzled, because it's okay to name that feeling 2 years into a pandemic. Another example is sandwich making with loaves and fishes. We have an amazing loaves and fishes ministry that's been going on for a really long time, and it's beautiful. And during the pandemic, we said, what if we made sandwiches once a month together? And what that's turned into is an intergenerational time, where not only are we caring for the community, but we are also getting to know one another. We've got new members coming in, we've got children working with people who are from a generation or 2 or 3 removed from them, and that's a gift. And finally, in terms of the wider community, Abraham's Welcome is a great example, and there's more written in my thing because I know I only get 5 minutes, but we have a little free pantry that continually gets used and that also gets stocked not just by you, but by people from the neighborhood. It has been a blessing to see people in the neighborhood take that as a sign. And twice since that's been up, I've had people come to me on Sunday mornings who were hungry and saw our doors open and saw the little free pantry and said, do you have more? And the answer was, heck yeah, we've got plenty. We have more than enough. And so let's give it out. And I don't remember that ever happening before during my time here, where somebody who was hungry saw our red doors open and said, they're going to give me help. And so that is a real blessing. Trunk or Treat was a really fun way to connect with our community, and I hope you all sign up to do that next year. And Dismantling Racism is a way that the youth worked to connect with the community, specifically in terms of the historical and present hurts and racism that affects many members of this community, but a lot of members of the wider community. We need to continue to build those connections so that we can be repairers of the breach. If loving God and loving neighbor is our bedrock, then we can't do anything other than seek connection with God, with the people who call St. John's home, and with our wider neighbors. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. It's a little hard to follow 2 trained professionals, but As Margie said, there are a lot of details. Please look into your annual meeting booklet because there are a lot of details about what we do here. Jeff and I thought today we would give you a little perspective, kind of like Todd did, a little history on the work of the vestry. Shouldn't take longer than half an hour, so. Over 10 years ago, when our part-time organist and choir master, Ralph Valentine, retired, the vestry at the time, recognizing the importance of music in the life of St. John's, decided to hire a full-time music director. That path began with a leap of faith, and not without a few hurdles, ultimately led us to Scott Lamline nearly 8 years ago. Since then, we have seen Scott nurture the music program into what it is now, including a glorious adult choir, an outstanding choir school, and a renowned community concert series, Music at the Red Door. In a similar way, after several years without an assistant rector, the vestry of St. John's decided that we needed to fill that position. It was not in the budget, but the vestry decided that our mission called for this, and we would rely on our faith that the budget would follow, as Todd talked about taking risks. This decision resulted in the arrival of Margie Baker, who preached her first sermon to us in June 2019 and was ordained here 2 years ago this month. Margie has become known throughout the diocese for her faith and creativity. Margie, her wife Jen, and their kids, James and Eden, have been a true blessing to our congregation. When Susan retired, the vestry decided that despite the uncertainty of COVID times and national trends in church attendance, to retrench was not our calling, and that, once again, we needed to set aside our budget and commit to a full-time priest in charge and concentrate on finding the best person for that job. This decision resulted in the arrival of Todd Fitzgerald. Since Todd first led us in worship almost 6 months ago, we have come to further appreciate his faith, intellect, humility, commitment, and calling, both to lead us and to walk beside us on our faith journey, both in here and in our community. We have only just begun our journey together, but we are so inspired by what we have learned and full of anticipation for all that God has planned for us. And we have loved getting to know Amy, Stella, and Flory. Rest assured, we have not gone rogue with your stewardship dollars. These decisions are always made with the counsel and support of our treasurers. During these latest years, John Roach and Tim Getz. While genuinely concerned about the strain we were putting on our budget, they were also wholeheartedly in favor of the decisions we prayerfully made together to follow the Holy Spirit in this way. Along the way, we have made similar commitments to the roles of parish manager and financial administrator, and the commitments we made to Ellen and Peggy have been far exceeded by their contributions to our parish. The same is true of Dwight, our longest-serving staff member and parishioner. Everything we do is made possible by this extraordinary staff. I have been so blessed to have Jeff Emmerich as my partner for this adventure. He is smart, deep, funny, and very calm under pressure. I cannot begin to approach what he said about me because I don't have enough time. Jeff and I have been so blessed to have been vestry members and wardens of this church. We would like to honor the vestry members, both current and past, for thinking outward rather than inward and placing faith before fear in making decisions about the direction of our parish. There really aren't words to describe our gratitude to our vestry members, present and past. Each of these smart, wise, and spiritual people have spent a lot of hours providing unique perspectives, and each have contributed in so many ways to the work we do together. We are also blessed with truly exceptional lay leaders. There are too many to name in my time allotted, and you know who you are. However, a special mention is necessary of a few people. John Roach and Tim Getz, volunteering to take on extra years as co-treasurers to provide stability during COVID. Kim Bird and Matt Sissel, who signed on as stewardship co-chairs in peaceful times, only then to confront stewardship during COVID and a rector transition. And yet were able to maintain their faith and focus to create inspirational stewardship campaigns these past 2 years. Laura Roach and Jeff Verney, who were charged with finding ushers and lay readers in a pandemic. Buffy Einison, who single-handedly ran the Altar Guild to minimize COVID exposure to others. And Lisa Mahoney, who led our outreach in the most desperate of times. Finally, we are blessed by this congregation for having faith in us and for responding to the commitment with your words, your pledges, and your presence. Forever, we will hear Walter's magnificent voice when we say, "Thanks be to God, alleluia, alleluia." Thank you all.
Well, good morning. It's so nice to see you all here, and those of you joining us online, it's great to have you here. I never take for granted the folks in the room anymore because I still recall that day going on a year ago where we were finally renewing in-person attendance at services, and what a moving to tears moment that was after such a year of the room being empty. So our worship at the center of our life as a church was really profound on that moment, and every time I look out and see people in the room, it brings that back for me, and very important. So even though we're in the midst of another round of stuff with COVID, we're here, and despite it all, our church is moving forward in an amazing way, and so I'm grateful at the head of all of it for all of that. And music being such a core thing for our church and our church life and worship is gratifying to me as well, to see all of your support for that. So despite all of it, we have returned to pre-pandemic membership of 45 members in our choir this year, and so to see continued growth. 14 children are at the core of that in our choir school. And we've made a little modification to our naming this year to reflect more what the choir is about, what that group of kids is about, and learn not only to get up in front of you on Sunday mornings and bring you beautiful music, but learn to be worship leaders and good Christian children as a part of that, and having education provided by our choral scholars to bring them one-on-one music instruction, as well as what we get with the group, forms well-rounded children and makes it possible for the future of our music and our worship to happen. And that's at the center of my heart for this program, and I know that you all enjoy and are blessed by their presence so often in our worship. None of that could happen without the dedication of those people, the 35 adult choir singers who are rolling with whatever I throw at them for a schedule. This month is particularly crazy. The parents who are dedicated to bringing their children here, again, with a crazy schedule, and believe in the power of music at the core of it to bring new life to them, the parents, the children, and all who hear them each week. And so I'm continuing to be excited, and I'm a little weary, I guess, because every week has brought a new little change, a new little pivot. It's been a difficult year in many ways to make it all go. But despite, again, I'm using the word despite a lot, despite all of that, it has been a huge joy and love to continue to do this and have it happen. So we're, in addition, preparing now for a concert for Music at the Red Door. It's the first time in now 2 years that the choirs will sing our spring concert together. It will be only the second time that the two choirs have been together in the same room, all 45 people at the beginning of March. And so we're doing that carefully, and we're doing that in a way that continues to feed our souls. So Music at the Red Door, speaking of which, is continuing to be successful, and having online audiences move into in-person and hybrid audiences has worked well for us, and some additional grant support has brought some additional help for me within the program and greater programs. And so that has continued to be a great bright spot for our music program and our church's life and our outreach arm into the community. We lost another year of our kids' music camp. In 2019, we had it for the first time for 3 days, and we were unable to have it in 2020 or 2021, first because of the obvious pandemic, and second because of a lack of the ability to find children to come. And are continuing to outreach into 4 targeted Hartford schools. Will hopefully bring attention to that for this coming August, and that will be a great final end to the great circle of how we bring music out to the community through things that happen in this space, and also directly to the community by having them come for a camp. I'm grateful, continually grateful for our great support here and our team, for Todd, new here and immediately gets it about how all music and how all the music program works within the things, and is able to articulate that so well, and support Margie for her amazing light and life and connection between what happens with the church school program and the chorister program. Ellen and Peggy and Dwight are regular office folks, and Ellen especially right here, just diligently taking notes and running the place. Don't do anything without asking her. Peggy, same thing with money. Don't do anything without asking her. And Dwight, just making sure our building is up and functional on a day like this. Even we're just so blessed to have a team that makes every day fun, makes every day a connection to God in a new, different way. And I just love working here. It's an adventure and joy every time I come into the building. Virginia and Jeff and our vestry continue to guide us in tremendous ways, and Virginia especially, I'm going to really miss your leadership. But you need to know that they ran the place for that time between Susan's leaving and Todd's arriving, including attending every staff meeting and keeping, which I wasn't for at first, right, Virginia? But eventually we became a wonderful team, and so to have their support and leadership throughout the transition, first of all, was able to make all this possible, and second of all, led to a wonderful call of Todd to our leadership role. I'm grateful for all of you for your support and love of my work and of music as such an important thing here. You get it. I can hear it in your song. I can hear it in your singing, and your resistance to, no, let's not do 3 verses this week because, yeah, you want to do it all. And so your support of that is tremendous and beautiful, and I love it. So thank you for that. How many of you are proud of this church? Yeah? Look at that. Oh, nice. So whenever we have here's my little challenge. I give this, I think, almost every year. Every time we have a Red Door event and we have a lot of outside people and just a few St. John's folks, it makes me remember that if more of you were here for those, you would be able to share how proud you are of this church with those folks who come here new. So pick one. Come. If you haven't been to Evensong before, oh my goodness, you're going to love it. Come and enjoy it. So that's all I have to say, and I wish you a wonderful day and a new year ahead, and I thank you again for all of your support.
I think if I stand up here, I'm as tall as John, right? Actually, he's still taller than me.
Maybe not quite.
So maybe you can just like slide this. Like,
Right. All right. Does not break either.
Usually we have a nice PowerPoint that we like to go over. That obviously is not happening this year, so John and I are going to attempt, I think, to do a PowerPoint without actually providing the PowerPoint to the audience. But I want to start with the
Okay, yep.
It's on. So Scott just mentioned and talked about St. John's, to talk about our financials, talk about our worship without mentioning Red Door is difficult, but they are separate. So we do report some numbers a little bit differently. But before I get into that, I do want to mention this guy right here. Tim and I signed up as co-treasurers, as we said, 4 years ago for a 1 or 2 year term, I forget what it was. And things happened, things changed, and we've been working as a team for this past 4 years. And it's really been a teamwork. My mother used to talk about my brother and I would finish each other's sentences, and I think Tim and I kind of got to the point where we could fill in the blanks. We're going to have a conversation. But beyond the numbers, he's also been focused on our ministries. It's easy for this role to get focused on just the numbers, but every time we talked about numbers, we said, let's stop, let's think about what we're really doing, what the really impact of this, and fill back. So it's been a pleasure. We had to play rock, paper, scissors to decide who was gonna roll off, but figured give Tim a little bit of a break. On the Red Door, so the Views of the Red Door finished very positively again here at the end of 2021. Not always for the best reasons, but income was great. It was up $70,375 compared to a budget of $58,000. That included some grants that Scott mentioned, and that really is kind of the original goal of Red Door, was to provide an avenue for grants, help support that music program. Also, expenses were down, it was $37,000 versus a $54,000 budgeted, and a large chunk of that was because we were not able to hold the kids community camp. Positive financial result, but maybe not the goal where we wanted to be. And I will say, another note is that Music at Red Door did an in-kind contribution of $7,500 back to St. John's to show support for some of the expenses and some of the shared revenue that we, $7,500 in-kind contribution back to St. John's to show sharing some of the expenses that we crossed over. It's kind of difficult to draw a line, but we appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, so I will go over the 2021 financial results. 2021 continued our positive financial trend. Income was above 2020, which was a great year as well, and 15% above what we had budgeted for. This was coupled with expenses well below what we had budgeted for. So, and this is exactly what you want to hear from your treasurers, that income was over and expenses were down. We actually had a sizable surplus in 2021, which I'm not sure when the last time that happened was, but we'll go into some of those details a little bit later as well. So how do we get there? How do we get to this surplus? On the income side, generous support from everyone here, as well as those watching online, resulted in pledged receipts of $22,266 more than what we had budgeted for, which is 5%. Traditional gifts and plate offerings were $31,000 above what we had budgeted for, and we budgeted for big numbers. So again, you guys exceeded our expectations. We had PPP loan forgiveness of roughly $110,000, which did count as income financially for us. And then the educational play care, which is the daycare that's run out of the synagogue. They rent our parking space, for those that don't know, and that's sizable income for us. And we generated $41,000 in rental income from that, as well as maybe some of the other buildings, some of the other rooms here. We expected that, but we didn't expect it to be that much, because we were planning on, I think, one quarter, and I think we ended up getting 3 quarters of rental income from the parking lot rentals. So now on the expense side, total expenses again were down significantly. We were down $157,000 in total expenses from what we had budgeted for. That was 19% of our budget. So the question is, how do you reduce your expenses by almost 20% and grow as a parish? And we did that. It was $11,000 in savings from the staff, general expenses, operating program expenses, and staff expenses. That was staff savings there for the most part. But we had $144,000 in savings from our budget on compensation, both lay and clergy. And so now, how do you have that kind of savings for your staff? And so there was 7 months of a vacancy in the rector position, and there was $90,000, almost $91,000 received in employee retention credits from the CARE Act. And so those two things together were $144,000 in personnel savings. So, kind of the big picture on this again, you've got the generosity of the parish, along with the CARES Act that we utilized, resulted in $96,730 over budget in expenses. And total expenses, again, were $157,000 below budget, which resulted in a surplus of $254,000 when we had budgeted for. Again, a huge number, but the caveat there being there was roughly $200,000 in PPP loan forgiveness and employee retention credits. So that's a one-time occurrence, hopefully. And if that didn't happen, so our actually net shortfall was $47,000, and which is the 7% of the 3-year endowment average. 0.7%, I'm sorry, 0.7% of the 3-year endowment average. So this again is, without the one-time $200,000 from those two programs, our shortfall would have been $247,000. So again, not great numbers, but financially for this year, it worked out well.
Okay, then we're going to talk a little bit about stewardship, because you can't talk about finances, you're going to talk about stewardship. And I do want to take a quick shout out to Kim Bird. I think I aggravated her a little last year when we were short, and she pulled out all the stops. I'm not sure what she resorted to, but she filled the gap and made us whole to continue on our financial plan. But for 2022, your generosity resulted in pledges of $504,704,000. That is up $46,000 from last year. That is the highest dollars since 2013. Is that correct, Kim? Since 2013. We received pledges from 151 households, an additional 18 pledging units. We had 29 pledges, people that didn't pledge last year but did pledge this year. And we had 57 people, or 57 housing units, we call them, I guess it is the term, increased their pledges over last year. And all of this is done during a pandemic when we have reduced services, a clergy transition, whatever else going on, right? So there's a lot going on, and we thank you for your support going through that. I'd also like to say thank you from the treasurers and the vestry. One of our biggest challenges is creating the budget. Excuse me, creating the budget. We can't create the budget without your pledges. We can't decide how much we're going to spend. We know how much we're going to get in. And so I think I can say for all the vestry, the staff, the clergy, thank you for your support. Specifically, I'd like to also thank a number of people who participated in that stewardship campaign. We had speakers, we had contributors, where people wrote articles, we had phone callers, people who wrote postcards. Todd, Margie, and Scott were engaged on a daily basis. The staff, Peggy and Ellen, the stewardship committee, June, Eleanor, Susan, David, and Stuart Murchie. And then, of course, like I said, our leaders with Kim and Matt just did a fantastic job of driving that forward. We also can't talk about the budget without talking about the endowment. So, as you know, we have a fairly sizable endowment. Our assets increased from $7.2 million to $7.8 million as of December 31st. We do expect this performance to slow in 2022, but it's been a fantastic performance. In 2021, we did withdraw $250,000 to support church activities, and we've budgeted $407,904 withdrawal from the endowment in 2022. That's a huge number. We are in our second year working with fiducian advisors. We've been very pleased with that organization. I was involved a little bit with Chris Bird, listening to our previous advisor that was inadequate. And the current fiducian advisors is professional, helpful, and they've had a great performance, of course, during this chunk of the stock market. I'd like to thank Dave Grimaldi and the investment committee chair, and then the rest of the investment committee with Chris Bird, Stephen Christensen, Stuart Murchie, Hal Reeves, Alex Vance, and then Tim and myself there as well. I mentioned that $407,000 in budget withdrawal. Based on the current market valuation, Fiducian believes that we can support that number for a 20-plus year span. If that market number drops, if that valuation drops, that's going to it has a significant impact on the ability of that endowment to withstand itself. And if we go above that $407,000, it starts to significantly impact into that endowment. So it's a great big endowment, but if we aren't prudent, it can go away fairly rapidly. The other point I want to say is that that means that four out of every $10 we spend is due to generosity of mostly of our predecessors. It's people who gave in the past, and we're living off that today, helping us support our mission and our ministries. Back to Tim.
All right, so, one extra point on the stewardship is, those numbers are absolutely amazing. And especially when you realize that that's bucking the national trend on everything. I mean, we are growing as a parish when other parishes are getting smaller. So, and definitely kudos to the Stewardship Committee. All right, the 2022 budget. This was a bit of a challenge to create for us. The last normal year we had was 2019. So we've had 2 years of non-normal years, so it really makes budgeting difficult. So we did use 2019 as a point of reference for the 2022 budget, but also realizing it's 3 years later, and current economic environment does dictate that we take that into consideration, particularly rising inflation, and that might impact our revenues. We weren't sure before the stewardship campaign started whether that was going to impact the revenues, and our budgeting process starts before then. But we certainly knew that that would impact our expenses. So kind of difficult to do that. The vestry approved the budget, and it is in the annual report that has been provided. We assume some normalcy while still capitalizing on the positive momentum and energy of the church. We don't want to stymie that in any way. We have budgeted pledge receipts that are 15% greater than 2021. This is, again, like John said, this is the highest we've had since 2013. When John and I started as treasurers 4 years ago, we were budgeting $415,000 in pledge income, and 4 years later, we're at $480,000. So, just imagine if the next 4 years are as good as these. However, total income is actually going to be below the 2021 budget and the actual realization of 2021, largely due to the PPP loan forgiveness. That was a one-time occurrence of $110,000. That's hard to replace. Total expenses in the 2022 budget are $266,000 greater than the 2021 budget, with the two largest increases coming from compensation of both the lay and the clergy, and again, the loss of the CARES Employee Retention Act credit. The total budget itself, and actually I do want to talk about the compensation and lay, the lay and clergy compensation. One thing that we did do this year is we gave raises to the entire staff, lay and clergy. The vestry voted unanimously to give raises to all the staff. The work that they've done for us the last, since they've been here, but especially the last 2 years, this church would not be standing without them. We owe so much to Peggy and Ellen and Dwight and Scott and the clergy. If you see them, just thank them for everything that they do for us. That being said, the total budget is, and I've never seen this here, $1,026,904, which is a large budget. But again, we've got a lot of responsibilities with that. We've got great building and great staff. So it is an investment. This, as John just said, this is a shortfall of $407,000, which would be a 5.73 endowment draw. The vestry, the wardens, the treasurers, we all support this budget. We made a decision roughly 5 years ago, I think, to really invest in St. John's, and that came with some deficit spending that we knew was going to happen. This budget is in line with that, but I think the results we've seen over the last 5 years justify that. The 2022 budget, you guys do have that in the reports, just some top line numbers. Again, the total income we are budgeting for is $619. The total expenses is, again, $1,026,904, which results in a 5.7% endowment draw. Any details on this that you guys want further, you can certainly reach out to John and I. And I think we just have some graphs that we can't really show. Although I will say, you guys can't see these graphs, but we do have a graph here. I'm not sure if you can see it or not. But this is the pledge trend, and this is what I talked about also bucking the national trend. You can see we hit a little lull here, and then it's been upward trajectory the last 5 years. And then again, total number of pledges, upward trajectory the last 6 years. So I mean, this is great stuff.
The other interesting part in that is for the first time in 5 years, the average pledge dollar amount is down. Why is that good? That's good because we have a greater number of pledgers. So a greater number of people are participating. We're less dependent on some large donors. So that's a great trend and something we want to support. We want more people rowing the boat rather than one big, strong person rowing the boat.
And then we've got, we always do these fun facts. So the total cost for 2021 to operate the church and support our programs was $2,661.87 per day. And that's excluding the PPP loan and the employee retention credit. So $2,661 to maintain a single day of the church. The expected cost for 2022, that was 2021. 2022, the expected cost is $2,813.44 a day. As John said, the average pledge is $3,342. Salary and payroll expenses represent 60% of this. The physical building is 23% of our total expenses. Our pledges support 56% of our total expenses, and the endowment, will support 39, almost 40% of our expenses. So just
Any questions?
Paul Shaker wants a raise.
All the raise. You're going to get the same raise that you're getting.
Duly noted, Paul. Well said, BJ. She said, let's double the salary. Done.
There you go.
Any comments or questions? We do have maybe just a couple of minutes.
I just want to thank you guys. I mean, this last 2 years,
My Lord, it's been crazy. And thank you to all of you and all of you for keeping this place so vital. Because there are places all over this country and this world that are just shutting down. And clearly that is not what's happening in this community. So thank you all.
Thank you, Lisa. Good point.
I want to echo that. Now, I was speaking to someone in an industry vertical last night who was saying how they felt lucky because they're increasing. Over the last 2 years, I feel lucky. I said, you're not lucky. You leaned into something you knew about. You took a bet, which a number of us have done during the pandemic. And that's what you did, and that's what everyone here has done, which is outstanding. Because during those moments of March till September of 2020, you could move a whole other direction because you weren't willing to say, this is a place I want to invest. And many businesses did, but the ones that knew it, knew they were in the right vertical, if you don't mind that commercial representation, invested, and they're doing really, really well. And so I feel part of that with St. John's and with what everybody's done here. So it's not luck at all. It's thoughtful, it's methodical, but yet still innovative and inspirational. So thank you for all you've done, but know that it is not chance. It's through excellent action from all.
Thanks, Colin.
Thank you, Colin.
I wanted to speak on behalf of the Stewardship Committee, and a lot has been said about, oh, yay, thank you to the committee. It wasn't the committee. It was every single person here, online in this church, and it wasn't easy. I know it's not easy to give. We had to dig deep, particularly at a difficult time, and I want to thank every single one of you for doing that. I also want to thank every single one of you who helped in other ways, who gave beautiful, impassioned comments about what St. John's means to them, and people in the office who helped being creative and developing that beautiful newsletter. So thanks to every single one of you.
Thanks, Kim. Stuart?
Yeah, echo what everyone's been saying. When I think about 2021, sort of the PPE program, the return on investment that happened for the endowment, sort of an extraordinary set of one-time circumstances that really steady the financial base for the church in an extraordinary way, and almost in some accidental ways as well. When we think about the physical plant of the church, and I see in the building committee there's reference to a new HVAC system, and we know that over time there's always been big expenditures that come our way that are capital in nature, whether it's the sturding of the church itself or just big one-time capital needs. Is there any thought to, at this time, taking a portion of the endowment that might be dedicated towards those kind of big projects and saying we are going to carve out a certain amount of money to say we've got to do the HVAC system, or we've got to do things with the tower, or other things that we know over time are cost us a lot of money, because we've been so fortunate in 2021 that we'd segregate funds to do some of the big things we know might happen over the next 5 years, if there's thought along those lines.
So was the question, is there money carved out for some of the maintenance issues going on? Absolutely, and I'm going to kudo back to Chris Bird, if that wasn't your time or not. We have a line item in there for long-term capital maintenance. It used to be $50,000 a year, but we didn't depreciate items. We've switched that around to now we do $25,000 a year, plus we depreciate some of those past expenditures. So pretty close to $50,000 a year allocated for long-term capital maintenance of the facility, and that is carved out in the endowment. That money's there. That's the good news. Dwight came to me and said, we may have a large expenditure for the HVAC system, and I'm like, don't love to hear that, but we're prepared for it.
Thank you, Stuart. And thank you to the treasurers for that wonderful report.
Before I give up the floor, I do also want to take this opportunity to thank my partner of 4 years, John Roach. I didn't really know John until we became treasurers, and I think we've spent a lot of time with each other. John has always been a calming presence in the room. His guidance, his leadership, his mentorship of me, I can't thank you enough for that. And then these two sitting right here, I mean, words can't express how valuable you guys are to the church. And, just hearing you both talk now, you've used up all the adjectives that I wanted to, but, going through the last 2 years, especially between the pandemic and then the clergy transition and the search committees, you guys are the words can't put it, the value that you have here. And everyone owes you a debt of gratitude. So if you see these two, just thank them, profusely. So
thanks, Tim.
Miss you.
Thanks, John. So we have a few more minutes, and the next item is new business. I see Steve Crocker standing with a mic. No?
I was just asked to hold it for Scott.
Oh, okay. Steve's just ready in case, if anybody has new business that they want to bring up now. I want to go back to Harriet's question about a quorum. In our bylaws, it says that a quorum for the parish shall be no less than 10% of the voting members of the parish based on the previous year's official annual parochial report. And that would mean that we need to have over 32 people gathered, which we do, to have a quorum. So, and plus the people online. But back to your point, Harriet, we do have a quorum today. Any other new business?
I'd just like to ask if...
Hold on, Lisa, so that people that are online can also hear you.
I know we're doing this in the church this year for sort of unusual circumstances, but I personally feel like this is a great place to do the annual meeting. Not versus Hubbard Hall, but there's something pretty magical, I think, about sitting in this space that we worship in to talk about the business of the church and where we're going prayerfully. For me, I would love to see us do this regularly here. I know it's tough to broadcast things and do PowerPoints, but the truth is, staring at these, windows and sitting here with all of you is pretty meaningful for the annual meeting. So if we can think about perhaps continuing this, I think it would be great.
I think that's a good suggestion. John Roach may have a word about that with his desire for a PowerPoint, but we can review that later. We can come back to that later. Any other new business? Any other suggestions or comments or new business before we conclude and prepare to worship? Hearing none, then the annual meeting is adjourned. Let us go in peace to love and serve the Lord. Say again.
Don't worry, you really can leave. The kids have been doing their own annual meeting. They did reflection stations about what they loved about the past year, questions they have, and hopes for the future. And then they built that in Legos and wrote a description on note cards. So I encourage you to go and see what they have made, because you have about 16 minutes if you're not due up here.